The President of the United States, one of the most prestigious and most powerful job titles in the world. But not all of the men who held this office did a very good job. There were some that left such a poor mark on history that they were hardly missed when they left office. Hello everyone, welcome to Top 10 History, your hub for historical lists and amazing history facts. Today we're going to go over the top 10 worst American presidents. Now for this list, we are not going to consider the 5 most recent presidents, since their long-term effects on history are still yet to be discovered. This would include Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and current President Joe Biden. Make sure to watch until number 1 because who we selected as the number 1 worst US president may surprise you. Before we begin, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications on because we release a new historical top 10 list every single day. Also, make sure to smash that like button. Alright, let's get right into the video. Number 10. Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor was the 12th President of the United States and he served from 1849 until his death in 1850. The reason that we included Zachary Taylor on this list is because he is one of the most forgettable presidents in American history. Like recent President Donald Trump, he wasn't much of a politician either before taking office. Because he wasn't experienced politically, many claim that a lot of his decisions were ignorant and ill-informed due to his lack of experience and political expertise. He served in the War of 1812 and his leadership in the military described him as a man who was not able to adapt due to his lack of learning and the fact that he almost never wore his military uniform. Zachary Taylor was a Southern slave owner. However, his allegiances were quite neutral and were never really put to the test. He opposed the Compromise of 1850, which is what began to undo the Missouri Compromise. However, if the Civil War were to break out during his presidency, it was said that he would have been against states officially seceding from the Union. However, since his presidency was cut short, this was never put to the test. Being that he has nearly no notable accomplishments, he was considered one of our most forgettable presidents. Number 9. William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison was the 9th President of the United States, serving for only a month in 1841. Now, William Henry Harrison is on this list not because he was a bad president, but being that he only served as president for 30 days before dying of pneumonia, he did not have many accomplishments during his presidency. He may have lived on to be a very successful president as he was a successful military general during the War of 1812. He was also widely supported by the Whig Party, but unfortunately his successor, John Tyler, would betray the Whig Party and Harrison's entire cabinet would eventually resign. Number 8. Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th President of the United States, serving from 1869 to 1877. Now, this is a little controversial pick, being that Ulysses S. Grant is considered by most historians to be one of the greatest military leaders of all time. He was the leading general in the Union who led the North to victory in the Civil War. However, historians don't consider Grant to be a very good president. His administration participated in numerous scandals. They weren't as notorious as scandals such as Watergate, but the sheer number of them might make your head spin if you lived under his presidency. Not to mention he had a bit of a problem with alcohol dependency. Even Grant admitted it himself. His farewell message before leaving office was, "Mistakes have been made, as all can see and I admit. But I leave comparisons in history claiming only that I have acted in every instance from a conscientious desire to do what was right, constitutional, within the law, and for the very best interests of the whole people. Failures have been errors of judgment, not of intent." In his defense, he had a lot on his plate dealing with the harsh Reconstruction era and being preceded by a president who was considered by some to be the worst president in American history, but more on that later. Number 7. Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was the 31st President of the United States, serving from 1929 to 1933. Herbert Hoover came to office just months before the start of the Great Depression. Once the Great Depression struck with full force, he attempted to weather the storm by lowering taxes as well as starting work projects in order to create jobs. However, he was a strict conservative and refused to provide outright relief in the form of direct support such as welfare, leading many Americans to starve during the years of the Depression. To many Americans, he came across as cruel, uncaring, mean, and apathetic. Many became homeless during the Depression. The rundown, poverty-stricken shanty towns that many were forced to live in developed the nickname Hoovervilles. What made him the most notorious is signing tariffs that limited international trade, causing trade wars. Since the US is a superpower, this not only hurt the US, but it also damaged the economies of all other countries outside the US, as well as causing the Great Depression to go global. For the biggest challenge during his presidency, it is safe to say that Herbert Hoover failed to rise to the occasion. Number 6. John Tyler. John Tyler was the 10th President of the United States, serving from 1841 to 1845. Following the death of the shortest serving president, William Harrison, who died of pneumonia after only 30 days of being sworn into office, John Tyler became the first vice president to take over the presidency. John Tyler built up the loyalty and trust of the Whig Party and the people who supported it by claiming he supported their causes, such as the fight against the National Bank, which he supported when past President Andrew Jackson fought against it. However, as soon as he took office, he opposed everything that his party stood for. Suddenly, he was a huge supporter of the National Bank. As a result, his entire cabinet that was originally appointed by William Harrison resigned, as no one wanted to work with him, and there were even attempts to impeach him. As a result, John Tyler is considered the president without a party. Because of his betrayal, most of the Whig Party that elected him into office in hopes of fulfilling their dreams hated him and even kicked him out of the party. Number 5. Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore was the 13th President of the United States, serving from 1850 to 1853. So far, most of the presidents on this list are presidents who served in the years leading up to the Civil War, and there is a good reason for this. Millard Fillmore came into office when previously mentioned 12th U.S. President Zachary Taylor died in office. Millard Fillmore wasn't a great vice president to Zachary Taylor since they had very different ideologies. Fillmore supported the Compromise of 1850, which consisted of several controversial acts, including the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which Zachary Taylor strongly opposed. He was another president who betrayed the expectations of his party, losing the trust of the people. Although his actions and compromises did technically postpone the Civil War, the peace that he created was only temporary, and the outbreak of the Civil War would begin only a couple of years later. On top of all this, Fillmore did not see slavery for the moral evil that it was. He rather viewed it as a political issue. According to the New York Times, it was misfortune to see in slavery a political and not a moral question. Number 4. Warren G. Harding. Warren Harding was the 29th President of the United States, serving from 1921 to 1923. You know you have a bad president when he even admits himself, "I am not fit for this office and should never have been here." When Harding ran for office, he was extremely vague in what his true intentions were. While he was running, the hot-button topic was whether or not the United States should join the League of Nations. People weren't entirely sure whether he supported entry into the League or if he opposed it. While he was in office, he was more focused on playing golf, poker, and spending time with his mistress rather than running the country. And while he was distracted by these debaucheries, his government employees started partaking in mischievous acts, such as his Secretary of the Interior who accepted bribes from oilmen so they can tap into government-owned oil reserves. Harding's presidency was cut short by a stroke, most likely from the stresses and pressure that he faced during his presidency. Number 3. Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce was the 14th President of the United States, serving from 1853 to 1857. Here's another pre-Civil War president who became notorious enough to make it on this list. Although Pierce was from the northern state of New Hampshire, he had a southerner ideology, causing him to become quite a controversial figure. Pierce was a massive supporter of the United States expanding and acquiring more land, even if that meant adding more slave states into the Union. Along with his predecessors, he worked to repeal the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and was an avid supporter of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. He even planned to invade and annex Cuba, but being that the natural resources that are on the island would no doubtly make Cuba a slave state, he was pressured into calling off this plan. But a little fun fact is that if this plan came through, we might have more than 50 states today. Famed US President Theodore Roosevelt described the president as a servile tool of men worse than himself, ever ready to do any work the slavery leaders set him. Not the type of review you would want to see on the resume of a US president. Number 2. James Buchanan. James Buchanan was the 15th President of the United States, serving from 1857 to 1861. Another pre-Civil War president and quite possibly the most notorious of them all. James Buchanan is argued by some to be the worst president in American history. His term was the last full presidential term before the start of the Civil War, so he was the last president who could have taken action to prevent the Civil War from happening. He saw slavery as an evil, but like other Democrats during the time, he refused to take any constitutional action. He supported all of the compromises that led to the expansion of slavery into newly formed Western states. One of these compromises that he supported was the notorious Kansas-Nebraska Act. He supported the Dred Scott decision, which made it so that Congress could do nothing to prevent the spread of slavery into the new western states and territories. But possibly the biggest mistake of his presidency was his lack of action when southern states started to talk about seceding the Union. While southern states built more and more hostility towards the Union and talks about seceding grew and grew, Buchanan sat on his hands and did nothing to stop it, leaving his successor, Abraham Lincoln, a whole world of problems to deal with immediately into his presidency. Number 1. Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was the 17th President of the United States, serving from 1865 to 1869, following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. His presidency immediately followed the end of the Civil War, leading to the release of millions of African Americans from captivity. However, Johnson was not interested in giving these newly freed men and women rights. In fact, it was the complete opposite. He actively resisted any and all Republican policies that were intended to give African Americans any rights. He vetoed the renewal of the Freedmen's Bureau, the first civil rights bill, and he opposed the 14th Amendment, stating that anyone who was born on American soil is considered an American citizen, which he opposed since that would mean former slaves who were born in the United States would be granted citizenship. It seemed that Johnson and his administration were actively trying to undo decades of progress that the Civil War was trying to accomplish. The Johnson administration would be the start of many decades to come of persecution towards black citizens. His actions led him to be the first and one of only 3 US presidents to be impeached by Congress. Did these facts shock you? Make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more amazing historical facts and much more. If you like this video, check out this next video on the 10 amazing facts about Napoleon Bonaparte. Alright, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.